Grandfather versus grandson. The Dark Lord of the Sith against the Supreme Leader of the First Order. What if these two titans of the dark side actually crossed lightsabers? Would the legacy live up to the legend, or would the master prove that experience beats raw potential every single time? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're settling one of the most debated matchups in Star Wars history. And I know what you're thinking, this seems obvious, right? But stick with me because there's way more to this than you might expect. So let's break this down piece by piece and see who would really walk away from this fight. Before we get into the actual combat, we need to understand what drives these two warriors. Because in Star Wars, your connection to the Force isn't just about power, it's about your state of mind. Darth Vader is, without question, one of the most disciplined Force users we've ever seen. After the tragedy on Mustafar, he rebuilt himself through sheer willpower and decades of experience. By the time of the original trilogy, Vader had spent roughly 20 years perfecting his control over the dark side. He learned to channel his pain and anger into focused, calculated strikes. When Vader fights, every movement has purpose. He doesn't waste energy on unnecessary flourishes or emotional outbursts. Now, Kylo Ren is a completely different animal. Ben Solo had everything going for him, son of Han and Leia, trained by Luke Skywalker himself, and possessing the legendary Skywalker bloodline. But here's the thing about Kylo. He's perpetually at war with himself. Throughout the sequel trilogy, we see him struggling between the pull of the light and his commitment to the dark. That internal conflict, it's both his greatest weakness and, strangely enough, sometimes his strength. Adam Driver gave us this incredibly nuanced performance where you can feel Kylo's rage bubbling just beneath the surface. He's powerful, no doubt about it, but that power comes in explosive, unpredictable bursts rather than controlled mastery. And when it comes to a duel with someone like Vader, that lack of control could be a serious problem. Let's talk about what each of these guys can actually do with the Force, because this is where things get really interesting. Kylo Ren has some genuinely impressive abilities that we don't see from many other Force users. Remember in The Force Awakens when he just casually froze that blaster bolt in midair? That's not just stopping it. He held it there for several minutes while interrogating Poe Dameron, then released it almost as an afterthought. That level of precision and sustained control is extraordinary. He also showed us he can freeze people in place, read minds with brutal efficiency, and later in the trilogy, he developed the ability to transport objects across vast distances through his Force bond with Rey. His telekinesis is raw and powerful. When he's angry, Kylo can ragdoll opponents, stop lightsaber strikes with Force barriers using just his bare hands, and he demonstrated this while severely injured after taking a bowcaster shot to the gut. That's the kind of hit that sends stormtroopers flying backward, but Kylo kept fighting through it. But here's where Vader takes this to another level entirely. Darth Vader's Force abilities aren't just powerful, they're terrifyingly versatile. We've seen him casually choke multiple people simultaneously while dealing with other threats. In the comics, he's lifted T-AT walkers, pulled down starships trying to escape from orbit, and created Force barriers strong enough to hold back lava on Mustafar and rushing water from collapsing structures. Vader's telepathy is surgical. He doesn't just extract information, he reads your deepest thoughts, your hidden connections, your fears. That's how he discovered Luke had a sister, without Leia or Luke ever speaking about it. He also has precognition refined through decades of combat, allowing him to anticipate attacks before they happen. The key difference? Consistency. Kylo's power fluctuates wildly based on his emotional state. When he's conflicted, his abilities waver. When he's enraged, he becomes dangerously powerful, but reckless. Vader maintains iron control regardless of circumstances. He weaponizes his pain and anger without letting them control him. Moving to the actual blade work, this is where we really need to examine their fighting styles, and what they tell us about each fighter. Kylo Ren's combat style is aggressive and brutal. He swings his crossguard lightsaber like a weapon meant to cleave through opposition through sheer force. His technique is described as aggressive and unrefined compared to the Jedi of the prequel era. That's not necessarily an insult. His style reflects his character. He incorporates powerful strikes from unexpected angles, using the crossguard vents not just for show, but as additional weapons. He trained under Luke Skywalker, who himself was a master of Form 5, the same form his grandfather used. But Kylo never completed his training. He abandoned Luke's academy and then spent years under Snoke, who focused more on raw dark side power than refined technique. So what we get is a fighter with immense potential and natural talent, but without the disciplined foundation that makes truly elite duelists. Darth Vader, on the other hand, represents the evolution of Anakin Skywalker's formidable skills adapted to his new cybernetic body. Anakin was arguably the greatest lightsaber duelist of the Clone Wars era, having defeated Count Dooku and held his own against some of the finest Jedi Masters. After Mustafar, Vader had to completely reinvent his fighting style. He developed his own hybrid form that compensated for his reduced mobility with overwhelming power and defensive perfection. Every source describes Vader's style as precise, calculated, and relentless. He doesn't chase opponents. He corners them, reading their techniques and systematically breaking down their defenses. Where Kylo fights with passion, Vader fights with purpose. The Rogue One hallway scene perfectly captures what makes Vader so terrifying as a combatant. Every movement is efficient. He uses the Force seamlessly with his blade work, making him basically a nightmare to fight against. He's deflecting blaster fire, throwing enemies around, and cutting through opposition without breaking stride. But in a fight between Force users of this caliber, the mental component might be even more important than the physical. This is where the matchup becomes truly one-sided. Vader's greatest strength isn't just his power or his skill, it's his psychological warfare. He has this ability to get inside his opponent's head, to identify their weaknesses and exploit them without mercy. When he fought Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, he wasn't just testing his son's abilities. He was systematically demonstrating the gap between them, all while trying to turn Luke to the dark side. Against Kylo, Vader would have so much material to work with. Kylo's entire character is defined by his insecurity about living up to Vader's legacy. Imagine Vader sensing that, then calmly stating that his grandson is nothing but a pretender, wearing a mask to hide his weakness. Vader could point out that Kylo couldn't even finish what Anakin started, couldn't fully commit to either the light or the dark. And here's the brutal truth. Vader would be right. Kylo struggles with focus and discipline throughout the sequel trilogy. He destroys control panels when frustrated, lets his emotions dictate his decisions, and repeatedly allows his inner conflict to compromise his effectiveness. Snoke constantly criticizes him for this, and even after becoming Supreme Leader, Kylo never achieves the cold, calculated demeanor that makes Vader so effective. Vader, meanwhile, has buried Anakin Skywalker so deeply that it takes his son's love and sacrifice to bring him back. In a fight, that means Vader wouldn't hesitate, wouldn't second-guess himself, and wouldn't give Kylo any psychological opening to exploit. So, after examining everything, the Force abilities, the combat skills, the mental fortitude, who wins this fight? Look, I know this might disappoint some sequel trilogy fans, but the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Vader takes this, and it probably wouldn't even be particularly close. Kylo has the advantage in youth, physical conditioning, and possibly even raw Force potential, given his Skywalker heritage from both sides of the family. In a purely theoretical contest of maximum potential, an older, fully realized Kylo might have been able to challenge Vader, but we're talking about who they are as fighters, not who they could have been. Vader has every advantage that matters in actual combat. Superior training, decades of experience, better discipline, more diverse and consistently applied Force abilities, and complete psychological dominance. He's fought and defeated Jedi Masters who had lifetimes of formal training. He's adapted to fighting in his restrictive suit so effectively that he became more dangerous than he ever was as Anakin. Multiple sources describe Vader during the Rebels and A New Hope era as being at his combat prime, fully committed to the dark side, his suit mastered, his pain weaponized into pure focus. This is the Vader who carved through the Rebel ship in Rogue One like they weren't even there. This is the Vader who defeated Ahsoka Tano, one of the Clone Wars' finest warriors. Kylo's best chance would be to lean into his unpredictability, to fight so chaotically that even Vader couldn't predict his moves. But that approach has its limits against someone with Vader's defensive mastery and Force precognition. More likely, Vader would weather Kylo's initial assault, identify the patterns in his technique, and systematically dismantle him. The tragic irony is that Kylo spent his entire life trying to be like Vader, never realizing that Vader himself was a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when you lose yourself to the dark side completely. But that's what makes this matchup so compelling, isn't it? It's not just about who's stronger. It's about legacy, obsession, and whether raw power can overcome disciplined mastery. What do you think? Could Kylo pull off an upset under the right circumstances? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more Star Wars content. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you